one of the dangers with optimism is that it does fuel consumption. You say that your generation is more frugal, and in fact, studies show that your generation is the fastest, has had the fastest increase in luxury consumption. I think I saw something along the lines of 25% of millennials report not having enough to cover their expenses, but at the same time, they've increased 33% in their purchases of premium fashion and services, more than any other generation.
Let's let the other side respond to that
Sure.
Argument about materialism. Let's call it Jessica or David. David, we haven't heard from you in a minute.
Well, I mean, I think the important thing to consider there is what, as millennial spending patterns change. For instance, as Jessica's mentioning, when people are not planning for these large payments, of course you're going to see increases in other kinds of spending. That should not be surprising to anyone who looks at economics, that when people are not planning to buy houses and cars and these big capital expenses that people normally go through, that you would see increased spending in other areas. I also think one of the interesting things about, you look at in those numbers, there are two things which are kind of tricky, which is, one is increased spending on people eating out and increased spending on travel. Both of those things, if you go deeper into studies on both of those issues, show that people are engaging in those activities with friends as ways of developing communal experiences. And this goes to the question of thinking about community, which I think is really one of the big traits of this generation, that this generation is finding new ways to engage community in helping them have happier lives.
Can you very quickly, in 15 seconds, list some of those ways, and then I want to hear from your opponent, Keith.
Well, I think the most important point I would make on that is that this is a generation that has more relationships, more strong relationships with a diverse set of people than any generation.
Quantified how? Is that your gut, or is there?
No, it's in terms of the kind of access to communities that any person in this generation has.
Okay, Keith, come.
I think what we've traded, in a large part because of the ability to have social networks, like Facebook or whatever, is we have broader social networks, and young people have broader social networks than people who grew up before that. I think there's been a trade-off of breadth to depth to some extent.